Well, hello, everyone. I'm Linda Kirkpatrick. Thank you so much for joining today. We are here to talk about an incredibly important topic, mental health and wellness. What we've all experienced over the past year has taken a toll on all of our lives, physical, mental, and our emotional well-being. And the pandemic, while it's taking different turns in different geographies, some more positive than others, I think we've only just begun to understand the impact that this past year has had on our mental health. Now, even before the pandemic, we had a significant mental health crisis. Globally, over 260 million people were struggling with depression, and 1 in 4 people experienced a mental health challenge in their life. Now, we've had long periods of isolation, the loss of loved ones, and just the daily stress of reentry into this next normal. And that's really been accelerating this mental health crisis that we're in. And often, it's difficult for people to talk about these issues, even with friends and family. It's even more difficult to talk about it in the workplace. So recognizing all of this, MasterCard's partnered with Thrive Global, and they are a mental well-being program that really reinforces this notion of mental resiliency by offering tips and activities to shift behaviors and mindsets. As colleagues, I believe we have a responsibility to support one another and our mental well-being. And research actually shows that social support from our colleagues and our friends can have a significant impact on lowering levels of stress and even heart disease. I know myself, I found solace during the pandemic and continue to find solace by talking to my colleagues, asking them how they're doing. I really get my energy from being with people. And this past 14 months or so of not being around people in a face-to-face environment has taken a toll on my energy level as well. And I have found just having conversations with people, both on a professional level, but importantly on a personal level, and helping to connect with them has really helped me get through this time. So we are really fortunate to be joined today by Thrive Global's Chief Training Officer. His name is Joey Hubbard, and he's here to share more about Thriving Mind. Now, this is a program that all of our MasterCard colleagues have access to via their app called the Thrive app. And it really helps to provide insights on how we can support the mental well-being of all of our team members during these really stressful times. I've downloaded the app myself and I have used it and find it really terrific and an important reminder of what to do when things get really stressful. Now, Joey has had a very long and successful career, 30 years, coaching and facilitating motivational seminars to really teach professional organizations how to improve their lives, their careers, and really to support business all over the globe. He's actually helped not just the general public, but professional athletes, sports teams, large corporations, and he's super committed to finding ways to help people in workforces with direction in their lives and really just live better lives. So Joey, incredibly fortunate to have you with us today. I'm excited for you to share your content. I found it very helpful and informative, and I know our employees all over the globe will as well. So on that note, I'd like to turn it over to you, Joey.
Thanks so much, Linda, and it's nice to see you. I see all of you, even though you can see me, I can't necessarily see you. We're going to talk today about this important content, as Linda mentioned. One of the challenges that we have seen throughout this time, as Linda was talking about, was this lack of what we call diversity of connection. And when we were looking at the things that stimulate the brain, one of the biggest stimulants is interaction, connection. Walking through a hallway and saying hi to a colleague, having a conversation, connecting in a certain way actually can boost our brain, serotonin, endorphins, dopamine. We see those simple conversations can charge our brain for 30 minutes or so. We've taken that out of our workforce for many people. And the challenge then has become, well, where do we get those boosts? Not having those boosts has even increased the effect of the mental health challenges that people have been up against. Add to that, looking at screens more than you've ever looked at screens in the history of humanity. Think about the last 13 months. And so we know that that has an effect on our brain and our brain's ability to recharge. So I want to talk you through this and give you some tools. We call them micro steps that are simple actions you can take that give you the opportunity to do what we call recharging the brain. What Stanford medicine has discovered, when the brain is charged, the brain then is much more resilient. It has the ability and the capacity to manage stress much more effectively. Our emotional regulation is much more in sync. So I'll take you through this content. As Linda mentioned, all of you have access to the app. If you have not had a chance to download it yet, please go ahead. You can just open your camera up to that QR code and it'll pop up for you. And remember, the app is not publicly available, although you can see it on the App Store. You won't be able to actually get into it because it is an enterprise app specifically designed here for you, and you'll need the MasterCard code to get in. Once you're in, you'll have an opportunity to take an assessment, understand what area you might be most challenged in. The app will walk you through all of that. The other piece in the app that I think is important is that I'm going to give you a little bit of what is in essence a 90-minute course called Thriving Mind. And in that course, we break down in detail what are the different ways that the brain responds to stress and specific micro steps you can utilize to help you be more resilient, short-term, interrupt stress cycles, and long-term, build a more resilient brain. So you all have access to the larger course. I'm going to give you a short version of that today. And it starts with this idea that Stanford discovered using functional MRIs. It's basically an MRI that looks like an HD of the brain. But what you can see in HD is how the brain is functioning, what it's doing in relationship to certain responses, right? And that stimulus response activity, as they looked at it, they were able to, over thousands and thousands of hours, discover that the brain has 8 distinct ways that it will respond to stress. Stanford calls them biotypes. And this research is fascinating. You start seeing how the brain has very distinct ways that, depending upon stimulus, it responds. Now, I'm going to take you through that, but here's one piece that I want you to remember. No matter what your biotype is, no matter what the stress factors are, because remember, stress is unavoidable. It's part of the human condition. What is avoidable is cumulative stress. You don't want your stress to become stuck. And so ultimately what we're going to do is show you how do you put let's say pinpricks in the stress so that it deflates, or build a more resilient brain so that the stress doesn't even affect you in the same way. One of the keys to that is keeping your brain charged. All of us think about keeping our body at its best shape, right? We don't always do it, but we think about it. I want you to now begin to think about keeping your brain in its best shape. And that when you do, you will notice your response, your decision-making, your ability to be more resilient, all significantly increases. So imagine you plug in your phone at night, phone charges. You want to plug in your brain every night. And if your phone starts to discharge, we do microcharges throughout the day. Similarly, we can microcharge our brain. So I'm going to take you through the biotypes. As I explain them to you, do not be surprised if you think, that's me, that's me, that's me. You're going to notice that these are, if you see the dots, these are where the brain would light up if we were getting a functional MRI. And in essence, every one of us has all of these in our brain. So you could respond with all of these given the circumstances and situations of your life. COVID has increased the number of biotypes we're seeing with people. But if you were getting a functional MRI, your brain would light up in one of these ways, and they would tell you that's your predisposed biotype. Even so, as I said, you can experience all of them. First one is rumination. Rumination is the worry biotype. And with rumination, you'll worry about something when it's coming. You'll worry about something after it happened. You'll even notice that if you make a mistake, it's really hard to let go of it. Your brain spins. It goes into what's called default mode in the brain, where you're in that reflective spinning component. The other element of rumination that I want you all to be aware of, if you think that you're a ruminator, is it leads to self-criticism. And what you'll see is ruminators make a mistake and then they start to beat themselves up. Can't believe I did that. I am so stupid. I am so dumb. Those kind of narratives. And ultimately, that causes additional stress. What you're going to find is that these biotypes add to the stress of the experience, right? You make a mistake, that's over. You might be a little stressed about it and okay, I'm going to solve it. But ruminating about the mistake, being hard on yourself about the mistake, that's where you add the additional stress. Anxious avoiders are people who the biotype actually wants you to avoid whatever the source of stress is. And in essence, you'll see procrastination being the thing you have to look out for if you're an anxious avoider. Because what your brain will do is say, yes, that's something I know we need to do. There's some stress associated with it. Let's go do something else. And it gets hard to actually complete some of the things that are important to you. The other thing about anxious avoiders to be aware of is during this time period, what anxious avoiders get to do is they get to get out and diversify. So one thing that might bother them, they could just go somewhere else and it would diffuse it. During this time period, you couldn't go anywhere else. And so people in your life, people in your circle may have bothered you more than normal. You may have noticed even aversion to certain things because you weren't able to get the diversity in your life that allowed you to get away from that. So none unusual if you all of a sudden you find that the way, somebody brushes their teeth is driving you crazy and you ask yourself why. Well, it's because that's your biotype and it's over indexed on that. Negative bias is the biotype where your brain actually starts to see the world through what we call catastrophizing. It sees the worst in everything. It actually doesn't trust that the world is going to work out well. And in that, what you'll see in your brain is any of the situations, scenarios you want to take on, the brain says, I don't know if that we should do that. It wants to not do it because it feels like it's never going to work out. Threat response is the biotype where our brain goes into what's called danger mode. And that biotype, what happens is your brain doesn't feel safe in the world. And the interesting thing in this biotype is this is the one where people will start to feel very anxious, even sometimes go into, like an anxiety moment, because what will happen is their brain will trigger the hypothalamus, which is the one that produces cortisol, the stress hormone. And it doesn't even have to be a real event. Like you could be thinking about potentially something in your future and trigger an anxiety response right now, because in this part of the brain, it doesn't matter whether it's real or imagined. Interestingly enough, most of the stress that you're experiencing is in your imagination. It's not even based on what's really happening. It's an event, but then what we do about the event causes additional stress. So people with threat response could have, high anxiety, high cortisol, feel overwhelmed, even though they're sitting in their kitchen or they're sitting in their room on a Zoom call. Right? They're not actually in danger, but their brain is experiencing the world that way. Emotional numbness is the biotype where the technical term for it's called anhedonia, and it comes from the word hedonism, which means pleasure. Anhedonia means no pleasure. And what happens in your brain is you move into this emotional numbness, where literally the things that you enjoy, that you like, that you have fun doing, goes away. This is the biotype that leads to addictive patterns, because what will happen is when you experience numbness, every human being has a desire to experience something, to feel something. And so that's why there's a 300% increase in alcohol sales since last February. People trying to experience something in a world where it feels very numb to them. Context and sensitivity is a biotype where our brain loses contextual awareness. And what that looks like in the world is, it doesn't matter where you are, who you're with. And in work-related items, I get a lot of calls with people who are talking to me about trying to work with their teams, and their teams are not delivering on time, and people have lost, like the performance have dipped significantly. And what you'll see is people with context and sensitivity don't have contextual awareness. If there's a project that's due tomorrow or a project that's due in 3 weeks, they may do the one that's due in 3 weeks, not because they don't want to do the one that's due tomorrow. They just don't have contextual awareness that that's what they should be doing. So sometimes you have to actually literally have conversations with people about what they're working on and when they're working on it, because if they've lost that, they need direction. Inattention is a biotype where your brain goes into really has a very difficult time focusing. You'll see that your short-term memory seems to go. The challenge for you is that you'll say, I'm following a train of thought goes away. This particular biotype has been showing up a lot because looking at screens, we've looked at screens more than ever in history, right? Also burns our brain out. It shuts down what's called the prefrontal cortex. And when that starts to burn out, our brain has difficulty focusing. Then you add this biotype to it. You could say on Tuesday, I have people saying to me, my brain stopped working. It's only Tuesday. What's going on? Not unusual. Again, this is just the way your brain works. So there's nothing wrong with any of you who are experiencing all of these. We're going to show you how to interrupt them, but this is just the way the brain is responding to stress. And the last one, cognitive fog, deeper version of inattention. In your brain, what happens is the brain stops really wanting to function. You'll notice simple tasks become very difficult, brushing your teeth, taking a shower. You, in fact, don't even want to get up out of bed in the morning a lot of days. And you'll say, what's going on? I feel like I'm in this malaise and I'm moving very slowly. And again, every single one of us is probably experienced all of these since the pandemic began. One may be more predominant than others, but you may notice that they all feel predominant to you, and that's okay. We now know that these are the natural ways that the brain responds to stress. So good news around all of that is we spent time looking at how you can actually help manage that more effectively, not just for you, but for your colleagues. Because the more you can recognize these and support people with these, it becomes significant that they I see, I'm ruminating about this, I'm worrying about this. It's my cycle, it's what I do. I can let it go. I don't have to keep worrying about this particular incident or situation. And all of a sudden, their stress reduces significantly. So let me take you through what I would call these steps. The first one is for you. And it's to recognize that while most organizations have spent quite a bit of time telling you as leaders to be careful about your involvement with your team, because obviously we're not psychologists or psychiatrists or therapists, and we want to make sure that we're not, directing people in the wrong way. I will tell you that the most important thing you can do right now as a leader is to lean in. And lean in from the perspective of checking in. You don't have to be responsible for the solution. But one of the things that is impacting people more than anything is the lack of connection, the lack of interaction. And we see productivity going down significantly because of it. We also see, as Linda mentioned, this mental health spike, 1 in 4 people. That was pre-pandemic. Those numbers are going up because of the pandemic. So a simple intervention, conversation makes a difference. So when you think, I don't have time to get involved, I'm too busy, you should remember that as a leader, the most important thing you do in all the things on your calendar is going to be to check in with your people, because that's where we find the difference is made. And in the lean in, you don't have to have the great answer. You don't have to be perfect in solving anyone's solutions. Where your power is in listening. I'll dig in on this, but listening is a very powerful response. And when people feel heard, when they feel cared for, when they feel valued, when they feel empathy, we're seeing that it's completely transforming their experience. And this can happen quickly, where one day someone is on the edge and the next day the boss leaned in, listened, and everything changed. So it doesn't have to be a lot. It can just be, I just want to know how everything's going. What's on your mind? How are you taking care of yourself? Simple things. And I'll talk more about that. And also remember that you don't have to be responsible for the solution. One, there's plenty of tools that you offer as an organization that would allow you to lean people, just to send people to the right direction. But also, you'd be surprised by just being with them, being empathetic, letting them know you care, and asking the question, is there anything I can do to support you? It makes a huge difference, and that you don't have to be the solution maker here, okay? So I love this quote, and I love this idea of decency quotient, because it's interesting. The more we are human with the people that we work with, we are decent, that we are caring, that we are empathetic, you'll see that has such an impact on the people around you. And you will all remember that the people that you care most about in your work career are the people that leaned in a way that demonstrated their care for you, that had their hand at your back, that were giving you a nice gentle nudge in the right direction. So really lean in on this idea of how I can lean in and be decent, be caring, be human with the people that I work with. So I want you to just kind of think about this. What are some of the common signs of stress? I'm going to give you some of these, but I want you to think about it from the perspective of, I may be more internally focused. A lot of people are, but as a leader right now, I need you to start being externally focused, where you're paying attention to what your people are experiencing. It is much more challenging through Zoom. And I would still encourage you to pay attention, to lean in, to look, to not be doing other things when you're on calls with your people, so that you can pay attention and notice that someone may be a little off today. Someone may not be as involved as normal. You feel them pulling back. All of those dynamics become really important. Let's dig in on some of the tools that we can help you with here when you see stress showing up. When we talk about stress, I will tell you that sometimes you can see it on the face. Sometimes you'll notice a change in behavior. Sometimes people will tell you, I've got a lot on my plate. There's a ton going on. Sometimes it will have nothing to do with work. There'll be something going on at home that is triggering a lot of stress, and there won't be anything obvious related to work. And so being willing to check in on these things becomes critical. Some you will see, it'll be obvious, you can notice. Sometimes you're going to have to ask. And so when we think about this model that we call ALPS, the first most important thing is to ask questions when you have some kind of red flag, or even if there are no red flags at all, because some people are good at hiding it, where you just lean in and you say to them, hey, tell me what's going on. Everything okay at home? Tell me what you're doing to take care of yourself. Like the lean in, that's a deeper question than just hey, how's it going? People have gotten automatic in their response, even though you might really want to know. They're going to say, oh, everything's great. Rarely does everybody go, oh, it's horrible. It doesn't normally happen. So you're going to have to ask a different question and ask in a way where they know that this is not just a transactional question. This is a real question that you want to have an answer to. And in that, you will see that a couple things happen. When we talk about the highest, most productive environments, Bain did a study. They were looking at different states of employees. They saw that a satisfied employee produced at 100% of their capacity. If they were dissatisfied, it went down to 77% of their capacity. If they were engaged, it went up to 144% of their capacity. And if they were inspired, it went up to 225% of their capacity. And we looked at what caused engaged and inspired employees. 3 things: when someone felt heard, when they felt valued, and when they felt cared for. And you build that thing called psychological safety when you check in, and when they know that the question you're asking them, you intend to know, how are you really doing? Tell me what's going on. Now, not everybody will answer in that moment. Not everybody feels safe and willing to share about their personal lives or things that are bothering them. Many people are worried about perception if there's something that they're struggling with. And so you might even ask a question with, and just so you know, I'm asking because I've been struggling lately and feeling a lot of stress, or feeling like I'm, not my normal self. And that opens the door. Even if they don't walk in, later they'll reflect, and they may come back to you and say, hey, I just want to let you know, you asked and I didn't really tell you much, but there is a lot going on I want to just talk to you about. Right? So your job in opening the door is not to force anybody through, but let them walk through whenever they're ready. Okay? Big, huge, and it makes a difference in their minds. They know that they're heard, they know that they're valued, and they know that they're cared for. Second one is listen. And I say listening is a response because, again, you will never learn anything when you're talking. And while obviously as a leader, you need to drive and you need to give direction and all of that, but where you will learn most about your people, your colleagues, is through listening. And so being a listener becomes your a tool to understand, to learn, to build connection, to build empathy. Again, remember, connection, empathy, drive, engagement, and inspiration. It drops attrition, it drops absenteeism. Everything changes. So practicing an environment where you listen can be really important. And here's the thing. All of the research shows that it drives job performance. And again, that's not the purpose of all of this, just so that people perform better. But I will tell you, the purpose of it is to give people an opportunity to be at their best, which everybody wants. They want to be at their best, at their job, at home, and all of that. So using this tool gives them the best opportunity for them to be at their best, which is what they want, right? So don't underestimate the listening and to checking in. Hey, I feel you. I understand. I know what you're going through, or I went through a period of time like that before. Oh, yes, no, I haven't experienced that, but I tell you, let's get you some support, because I want you to make sure that you're cared for and that you can show up every day at your best, right? Whatever those answers are that let them know you're with them, we know that when you choose that, wow, does it produce an environment where people feel safe, where they feel connected to you. And again, we all know that feeling because we've all been there with people in our lives. I'm saying right now, transfer that same thing to the people that you work with, because they're humans who are having human experiences in one of the most difficult challenges in modern history. And your simple reach in, lean in, caring makes a huge difference. I know in your mind, you may know what big deal, but in their mind, the people that report to you and that are your colleagues, it makes a big difference. The other thing, I'll give you a couple micro steps. If you are an extrovert and you like to talk and you know that you're usually dominating conversations with talking, lean in and tell yourself, okay, I'm going to practice listening every day. I need to develop it as a skill. And so once a day, I'm going to tell my team, hey, I'm just listening to whatever you have to say, or you're in a one-on-one. I'm just going to listen to you. I want to understand what's going on. And literally practice that and be intentional about it, because the more you do it, the more you will notice, okay, I'm learning how to be in a way where I don't have to be the answerer. I don't have to be the solver. I can just be the listener. And that, again, is what people most care about. In partnering, I'll tell you, the element of advice. I was laughing with someone the other day who was telling me about how his wife always tells him, I just wanted to tell you, I didn't want you to solve it. And I find that there's a lot of people out there that, when you hear something, you immediately go to, okay, how am I going to fix this for them? And what I will tell you is you don't need to fix it. That's not your role. They may tell you, you may say, is there anything I can do for you? They may tell you that. But 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, no, I just wanted to talk to you about it. Sometimes it's at the level where you need to direct them somewhere to get support. But if you're just there for them, hey, I got it. I can hear that that's challenging. Let me know if there's anything I can do to support you. That's enough. They walk away knowing they have a partner in you. And that's what's important, not trying to solve it for them. Okay. So people often just need to know that there's a partner. And then on the support side, here's one of the things I'd encourage you to do. Make sure that nobody's out there on their own. You can't, some of you have large teams. You can't check in with everybody every day. I get that. But you may make sure that at least once a week, you've got 5 minutes, you've got 10 minutes. I had someone say to me, I'm so restricted because, I don't have the time to meet with all my people. I said, well, how many people do you have? 14. I said, okay, well, 30 minutes over the course of a week, I don't have that. No. You can do 10-minute one-on-ones, right? And you can get 3 people in half an hour. And it's just a reach in, hey, checking in, anything on your mind, and give them 10 minutes. And at the end of that, they go away feeling good. So don't make it, I have to be, long hour, half-hour meetings. Just reach in and check out once a week, check in with people once a week, and you'll see a difference. And then here's the one thing I will also tell you, as I mentioned up front, lack of connection is one of the things that's affecting many people, and they're not even aware that that's the thing they're missing. So, again, check in with what they're doing to take care of themselves. If they say, I'm not moving, I'm not sleeping, and foundationally, okay, you got to start getting your sleep. You got to start moving, even if you move on a call. You got to get some foundational stuff back in their lives, but also make sure that they're connected to people. The longevity study that Harvard did showed that it was the most important thing, positive relationships, for a happy, long life. And we know from some of you really felt it if you've been alone during this time period, what it means to not be connected to others. And even if you've had a regular group of people that your family you're living with, you're still missing all those connections that come with the way that you work. So check in and make sure people are connecting with others. If they tell you, I don't have anybody I'm connected with, get them going. That's going to be a critical element to their well-being, mental well-being, emotional well-being specifically. Okay. So then last thing is here, think about how do you practice sustainable compassion? Because you want to keep this going. You don't want to make it short term. You've got to make sure that you're well and that they're well. And so you have to be caring for yourself. Top thing on the list is sleep. You got to get 7 to 9 hours a night. Once you get to 18 years old, all the 650 sleep clinics in the world tell you you need 7 to 9 hours. It's how your brain recharges. And if your brain isn't charged, you're not as resilient. It is the foundational element to make sure that we are the most resilient we can be in relationship to our mental health. Okay. So sleep 7 to 9 hours a night, minimum of 7. After 9, there's no additional benefit. So get to 7. Okay. Second, downtime for the brain. You've got to learn how to declare an end to your day. It's one of the hardest things that happened since the pandemic. We're working 3.5 hours, 40% more a day since the pandemic kicked in. You've got to find a time every day. You decide when it is. It'll change where you shut it down. Today it's 6. I'm done. Okay. Shut everything down. Go be with the people you love. Walk your pets. Watch a silly movie with the kids. Eat dinner with everybody. Meet with your friends. Whatever the safe and nice thing is for you to do, do it. But do it. Because when you do that, your brain recharges and it's at its best the next day. Practice getting away from your devices. Get your devices out of your bedroom at least 30 minutes before you go to bed. An hour is even more ideal. The lack of devices lets your brain produce melatonin, which allows you to get the deep sleep that's necessary for your recharging. So at least 30 minutes, no ebooks, no technology. Put it in the bathroom. Don't put it next to your bed where you're going to look at it in the middle of the night. Put it on your dresser. Get it away from you and get your 7 hours of sleep. Take a shower, take a bath, read a real book. Makes a huge difference. Getting small breaks throughout your day, critical. Micro breaks help you concentrate. It's significant. And when I say micro break, I mean stand up, stretch, get a glass of water, come back to your screen. Like stand up, walk outside, get some fresh air, come back to your screen. 2-minute, 3-minute breaks make a huge difference throughout your day. All right. So remember, in the app, you're going to get lots of recommendations on your microsteps. But for you, make sure you're taking care of yourself so you can also be there for your colleagues. So as you go through this app, look for one thing. I know there'll be lots of them, but look for one thing that you can start now, that you can work on with somebody in your life. If you want to have a accountability buddy, get an accountability. You want somebody who's probably ruthless, tell your kids that you're going to do something and they'll be all over you on it. But whatever you're doing, find somebody to support you, use the app and do this, whatever your step is every day makes a big difference. Okay. So let me take some questions here. You can write them into the Q&A or the chat, or Linda might have some already. So hi, Linda, coming back to you.
Hi, Joey. That was phenomenal. So many nuggets of goodness that you presented there, just incredibly insightful and important, because I think, you've articulated in, just a half an hour what I think so many of us have been feeling for over 14 months. And it's fascinating to hear that there's actually a science behind how people react and the different ways in which people respond to stress. I actually had a question right off the bat on the biotypes. As you were going through the various biotypes of the brain in the earlier slides, I was thinking, is it possible to have multiple biotypes, and or do those biotypes change over time, or are you sort of set with what you've got from birth?
Well, so because they can't give babies functional MRIs, they've tried. Babies move too much. You have to be still to get those. In fact, they just got one recently, but it was I think the baby was 6 months old. It's hard to know when the biotypes are locked, but we know that everybody who gets a functional MRI as an adult has a predisposed biotype. But we also know that circumstances trigger different biotypes. So you may, let's say, be a ruminator, and through COVID, threat response kicked in. You're just afraid for your safety. Negative bias kicked in because social unrest and all of that happened. Elections happen, and you see all those things happen, and it could have triggered an additional biotype. And so you may have 3 or 4 or 5 happening simultaneously. Not unusual, all okay. You sleep, you move, you connect, you eat right, those things will start to go away. So these ideas or these tips that we give you are designed to be upstream from the biotype, so that you don't get downstream into the way those biotypes can affect us.
That makes sense. And Joey, I really liked your analogy to recharging the phone. I think it's a really important visual as well. Like, everybody can understand, okay, I'm low on battery, I've got to plug in. And if we can think about that in the context of the human life, we can take the micro steps to heart. Speaking about the phone, I know a lot of folks are thinking, like, I would love to unplug. I would love to, put the phone down. I'd love to call a natural end of my day. But it's hard because, everything we're doing right now with the pandemic is so digitally focused. In fact, it's probably the only way many of us are connecting.
That's right.
So how do you separate that, in this world that we're living in? How do you actually unplug?
Yeah, and that's the thing. You have to make the decision. So the first mindset shift is, I'm never going to get everything done. And now I always ask people to breathe when I tell them that, because most people are like, oh no, I'm getting everything done. It's like, no, it's never going to happen. Even when you think you're there, there's going to be more that gets added to the list. So that's one. And that allows your brain to go, I can shut down because I'm not going to get it all done. So I can pick up tomorrow with the most important things. So that becomes the first mindset shift. The second is FOMO, right? FOMO is real right now. But people are saying, I'm going to miss out if I turn everything off. It's like, so, right? If our brains can't even begin to go, that's okay for me to miss out. I need to be on everything. So being willing to let that go becomes important. And then the last thing is to say, what is really my priority? At the end of my life, will I look back and say, man, if I could have just been on my phone more, I'd be happier right now, right? Could I just answered more emails? Like all those things. No, we're going to say, did I love the way I wanted to love, care the way I wanted to, connect with the people that are most important? Let me put this down and go hang out with my kids, or hang out with my pet, or hang out with the people I love. That's what I will have wanted to do more of at the end of my life. Remember that now. And then say, next, I'll get to whatever's there later. But for now, let me go be and do the things that are the reason why I'm working this hard in the first place.
I love that, Joe. I think that's a perfect litmus test that we can all live by as we think about, shutting down and recharging. It's really, really important to think about what matters to us most. I know for myself, I've been getting micro steps recommended to me because I entered my profile into the app and talked about ways that I want to improve. And one of the things that's popped up is to think about, as I'm washing my hands or as I'm doing something else, think about things that I'm grateful for, or the things that, I appreciate. Yeah. And, just having designated time to do that. I mean, you can, I suppose you don't have to do it while washing hands. You can think about it, you can find another activity in your day, but just realizing what you appreciate and what matters most to you and finding deliberate time in your day to do that is super helpful. And, as leaders, we're all leaders. We can emulate the behavior we want other people to follow. And so if leaders disconnect and show their teams that they're disconnecting, I think it's a great benefit for others to see that so that they can follow in the footsteps.
Yeah. And remember two things. One, that disconnection time actually makes you more productive the next day. See, people think that staying connected is driving productivity. It's actually driving a diminishing return. You will see that your productivity starts to dip over time. So the disconnection isn't just because I want to be with the people that I care about. It's also an opportunity for my brain to recharge so that it's better the next day. That's important. And then gratitude's the magic thing. We saw a recent research study came out of UCLA. In 7 days of doing gratitude, the neurology of your brain will change. The happy zone gets larger, gray matter gets thicker. Everything changes in 7 days of just doing gratitude, and for kids in 3 days. So wow. I say it's the most important thing going right now, because you don't have to do much other than think about what you're grateful for, think about the experiences you're grateful for, the people you're grateful for, and it changes the brain.
Yes, it's a no regrets move for sure. And we actually have a lot to be grateful for in our lives. And so just acknowledging that is super important. Is there, folks are asking if there's a place where we can find out more information about the biotypes?
So what you should know is that this was the first time Stanford Medicine has ever partnered with a private company to take their internal research public. So you're on the front end of all of this information. There will be more, published in the future about it, but the best place to dig in on this is actually in the app, in the course Thriving Mind. You'll get 90 minutes of all of this content in more depth. And then secondly, if you're just really a nerd like I am, I hang out with Leanne Dr. Leanne Williams led this research study. You can go look her up on YouTube. She probably has a lot more views. She used to have like 100 views of her talking about biotypes. And I said, this is not a marketing organization, obviously. But I keep telling people to go look at that. So if you're just really a nerd, want to understand more about it, you can look up Dr. Leanne Williams, Stanford Medicine, and you can see more about it. But the course is a compilation of all of their research put together in a product that you can look at, self-paced, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5-minute videos, and learn more about it.
Super helpful. I think we need to get Dr. Leanne on TikTok. That might do it for her.
Yeah, I tried. I'm trying, man. They're research people,
Yes. Well, Joey, I can't thank you enough. On behalf of everyone at MasterCard, thank you for sharing your insights. Thank you for all of the nuggets of goodness that you've imparted on us today. You've given us a ton of food for thought, and we really appreciate everything that you've brought to the table. We're going to all, I know, try and figure out ways to implement these tips in our everyday lives. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Love you guys. And, I'm sure I'll see you soon.
I hope so. Thank you, Joey.